So let's have a little chat, shall we? Let's have a little occult chat. This is your host, the Occult View. It's a whole lot of stuff. It's a whole lot of stuff going on in the cosmic world. So, as usual, um, there are a few things that I want to address. Um, that really I made a video yesterday, but because I was not here by myself, I really did not feel comfortable talking about what I was talking about. I was, revisiting the Vietnam War. And what made me revisit that was I saw something in reference to Jane Fonda because, she was involved in a lot of controversy at that time with the Vietnam War. And I can truthfully understand now why some vets had an issue, a serious issue with what Jane Fonda did. And I had made a video about it, but I decided to not post it. But a lot of stuff happened in in that 20, I believe it was a 20-year war. There was a lot of things that happened, and the Vietnam War was similar to, I'm going to say, the destruction of Atlantis. It really changed the vibration and the scope and the frequencies and just the nature of the function of the United States. Now that's on the political side. On the spiritual side, there was a major awakening taking place during 1955. There was an uprising, and you saw manifestations of that. For example, within the civil rights movement. Even though we know the civil rights movement was kind of like a hack or kind of like on some fraudulent shit, but nevertheless, I'm just using that as an example. You saw an uprising in people becoming more awakened during that time. So to shut that energy down, to shut that shift down that was taking place spiritually, this war came about and it lasted for 20 years. And I was calculating the numbers that were associated with that particular war. Anybody that was born subsequently after the Vietnam War, and I'm talking about people born after the war practically ended, like myself, we were born into a wholly, I'm sorry, I said wholly, a totally different world. The world was very destabilized. And that war brought about what people talk about, which is the end of the world, the end of civilization. See, when people think of the end of civilization, oftentimes they think a total end. No, 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 no. We're talking about the end of certain values, the end of certain ways of life that were, acceptable and civil. You know what I'm saying? And it's interesting that the Vietnam War started in the or at the pinnacle of the Jim Crow era as well. So I was talking about that, but I don't really want to go down that rabbit hole too much. But I really think people need to re-examine the Vietnam War. I was born in 1979, and I've always known something was off about the world. And the Vietnam War opened up a whole new world for people. And there were so many people, and they won't tell you this, but there were so many people, black and white. They only want to make it about one group of people, but it was a lot of white people that suffered behind, white Americans that suffered behind the Vietnam War as well. Take the emotion out of it because I like to look at the bigger picture because all of this ties into occultism and spirituality. Because personally, what I think they were doing, and I'm going to say allegedly, I know, but I'm going to say allegedly, I think they were over there tinkering with time. I think they were over there tinkering with the timelines. I think that was the main basis for the Vietnam War to change and to alter certain timelines. Because if you really think about it, and I mentioned this yesterday in the video that I did not post, and I'll say this much, think about all of the deaths that took place from the start of the Vietnam War and the Civil Rights Movement up until the end. Have you noticed that in the 60s, there were so many mysterious deaths from Marilyn Monroe, JFK, Malcolm X, Martin Luther King, because truth be told, we still don't really know what happened to Martin Luther King because I've heard stories that he actually survived that shooting and they took him to a local hospital not far from that hotel where he was shot at. They took him to a local hospital where a racist white doctor smothered him. I've heard that, you know? So it just makes you wonder. And we all know that Martin Luther King had his shit with him too. And I know that's not politically correct to say that, but it is what it is. You remember, I'm an occultist. I don't have a favorite, group. Not even the group that I'm supposed to be in. So I'm looking at things from a bigger picture. I mean, we can go down the list. Martin Luther King, Dorothy Kilgallen, JFK, Robert F. K, Jane Mansfield. Yeah, Jane Mansfield, she knew some stuff. And this is not a conspiracy theory. These are all documented facts that these people died under mysterious circumstances. Now, I know Jane Mansfield died in a car crash, but there was a lot of rumblings behind that. Judy Garland. I mean, the list goes on and on. So I think that, people just need to just go back and really look at the Vietnam War and how that brought a new frequency and vibration to the planet after that war. And those of us that were born after the Vietnam War and Generation X, no wonder Generation X was so disenfranchised. No wonder we had so many problems as Generation X because look at what we were born into. Look at what we were left. Look at the mess that we were left. Because the boomers, they got everything that they wanted. They got everything that they wanted practically. Generation X was going to be the sacrifice for that war. That is why subsequently people that were born in the late 70s and early 80s, we inherited such trauma from our parents, from our genetic line, and a lot of it stems from that moment in time when that war took place because it destroyed a certain way of life and it brought in an end to a certain civilization that was thriving for some. Like I said, I don't want to go down that rabbit hole. It's really a lot, but I was talking about that yesterday and I just decided not to post it. But this is what I really wanted to talk about. Here we go again, where a person cannot speak their minds without being put in a certain label. Patti Lupone and Audra Mcdonald, and I believe the other person's name involved in this is, let me look her up because I'm just so tired of this type of distractions and BS that they keep trying to throw in our faces. Let me see what this person's name is. Keisha Lewis. Okay. Okay. First off, I do not condone, let me say this as a disclaimer. I get it. I do not condone anyone degrading anyone unless it's an enemy of yours who's actually done something to you horribly. I think that horrible people deserve to be degraded. I do. But I don't like bullies. And I can see how Patti Lupone's actions could be looked at as being a bully. And I can see in this racially charged environment how it can be looked at as being, let's just say, subliminally racist. But if you know anything about Patti Lupone, which I do, I like her work. I've loved her work as far back as Driving Miss Daisy when she played a real racist on there. This woman named Florine, but Florine was so entitled. She was like the Karen of the 1930s or 40s, the character in Driving Miss Daisy. Florine was so ridiculous that you couldn't do anything but like her. You know what I mean? It was a role, it was a character. She played Miss Daisy's daughter-in-law in Driving Miss Daisy. But I've seen other work that Patti Lupone has done, and I've always been an admirer of her work. I loved it when they brought her on to American Horror Story as the crazy, abusive Christian mother in season 3 of The Coven, where she was basically abusing her son. Something went on between Patti Lupone and Keisha Lewis doing during, excuse me, a show that I believe they both were having. I think Keisha Lewis was doing Hell's Kitchen, and much love to that sister for what she does. And Patti Lupone was doing another show next door, I guess. And the noise from Keisha Lewis's show was reverberating into the audience of Patti Lupone's show. So of course a person is going to be annoyed about that. Let me tell y'all something. I live below the noisiest neighbors in my new condo that are over top of me. They stomp loud. They're black. They stomp loud. They walk like they're trying to come through the floor. They have no regard for anybody else. They are loud. They are very loud and they're very disrespectful, in my opinion. Now, am I not allowed to say that? Now, I'm saying that in the privacy of my own home. Evidently, Patti LuPone complained to someone's at I guess not the studio. What do you call it? The At the Broadway production, somebody that was in charge about the noise coming from Hell's Kitchen's performance. And what made it worse was a fan wanted her to sign her autograph, but the fan had a Hell's Kitchen, I think, flyer or something, and the person wanted Patti LuPone to sign it on that. And Patti LuPone said, "No, I'm not signing that. They're really too loud and they're disturbing me." Now, I want to stay with the word loud. Can someone please tell me how saying someone is loud is now being translated into being racist or microaggression or microaggressive? What's the word? Being microaggressively racist. How does calling someone loud now translate into being racist? Where is the emotional intelligence here? Now, I'm not saying that Patti Lupone was right in what she did. She was dead fucking wrong. She was dead fucking wrong in how she handled this. And that's why she's getting the backlash. You're Patti Lupone. You're not supposed to handle things this way. You can, you can speak out, but there's a way to do it. There's a way to do it where you won't have dirt on your hands. But see, she started doing public interviews and she started calling Keisha Lewis the B word and making statements and stuff like that. And I don't agree with that. I think that was distasteful. I think it was wrong, but I don't think it was racist. I don't think it was racist. Why is it? I'm sorry, and I have to ask this question. Why is it acceptable for Black people to do the very same things to other Black people that white people do, but it never gets called out? My own mother has subjugated me to all forms of discriminatory trauma, and my mother has traumatized me more than any white person could possibly ever do. But that gets swept under the carpet. Other Black people have traumatized me more than any white person could possibly have ever done. But we're not supposed to say anything about that. And when you do, you're labeled a problem in the Black community. You're labeled crazy. You're labeled a narcissist. When did being called loud become a definition to describe a racist act? When did being called loud start defining racism? She said that their production of Hell's Kitchen was causing a disturbance reverberating into the audience of her show. And she says that happens all the time in Broadway. She preferenced it with that. But then she started adding other stuff. Then she pulled Audra Mcdonald into the mix because Audra Mcdonald liked a post, I believe on Instagram or somewhere. I don't know if it was on X or whatever the case may be. I think X, I think they canceled my or deleted my profile, but I don't give a damn. But anyway, Audra Mcdonald, the great Audra Mcdonald, who is another phenomenal Broadway star. I loved her rendition, I'm going to call it, of Billie Holiday. She played that role. She channeled Billie Holiday. Audra Mcdonald is absolutely wonderful. I love her. Then Audra Mcdonald gets pulled into this. So we have a Cancer, Audra Mcdonald, and a Taurus going at it. What type of ritual are they putting up? Are they putting Cancers and Tauruses up under right now? Because then you have, and I don't talk about this much, then you have Portia and Shamia going at it on the Real Housewives of Atlanta. And they're both singers and in the entertainment world as well. Audra Mcdonald liked a post of Keisha Lewis detailing her disdain and disappointment in Patti Lupone's actions. And she has a right to feel that way, not taking that away from her. But my thing is this, the bigger picture. Why is it wrong for people to express how they feel? That's my problem. So now Patti Lupone is basically getting ready to get canceled. That's where this is leading up to. She's going to be canceled because of some of the things that she said. She was upset because they were disrupting her stage performance. They were disrupting her fans, her audience, and she spoke out about it. She even wrote the people at Broadway or whatever she did. And now she's being labeled as a Karen. So once again, if I call a white person loud, is that racist? Because if we're going to call Patti Lupone racist, then we're going to have to call my mother a racist too. Because actually, my mother, the thing she's done to me is worse than what Patti Lupone said to Keisha Lewis. Come on now, we're going to have to start being honest about this type of stuff. Why is it wrong, or why are we beginning to live in a society where they try to shut people down unjustly for simply saying, hey, I don't like this? Now, Patti Lupone, where she made her mistake was calling her B words and saying demeaning things or seemingly demeaning things. I'm going to, just go with the flow that kind of added fuel to the fire. Now, Audra Mcdonald liked a post that Keisha Lewis had posted in reference to Patti Lupone's behavior. And that added a tsunami of flames to the fire because evidently Audra Mcdonald and Patti Lupone, they must have had some type of relationship with each other. They were friends, but they've had some type of falling out. Now, Audra McDonald, she said, to her knowledge, she and Patti LuPone are fine. She said if there's a rift, she told Gayle King, you have to check with Patti LuPone about that because I don't know anything about it. She's a cancer. She knows exactly what's going on. Cancers are not stupid people. It's just that Audra McDonald is smart. She's not the raging emotional bull like the Taurus. She's smart and she's not going to feed into that. But what people have to understand too is this: as far as it pertains to Audra McDonald and Patti LuPone, they have a history with each other. They have not spoken in 11 years. You know, they have not spoken in 11 years. So I don't know what happened between them, but something happened because then Patti LuPone, she went on to say some not so nice things about Audra McDonald because she saw that Audra McDonald liked the post that was accusing Patti LuPone of being a racist. And I don't know. Maybe she is one. I don't know. And I don't care. But what I'm saying is, why is it wrong to say, hey, listen, these people are disturbing me. These particular individuals are disturbing me. Take Patti LuPone out of it. It's like people don't want you to say when something is bothering you. Just like my landlords. I mentioned to them about the people upstairs. Well, they're very nice people, and I'm sure that they don't know that they're making the noise, and they're very nice people. People are always nice people until you call them out on something. People are always nice people, especially black people, and I'm saying, and I don't give a fuck who gets mad. People are always nice people, especially black people, until you tell them that they're doing something that you don't like. And maybe that's all people. I'm not going to be, bigoted, okay? But maybe that's all people. Everybody's nice, myself included. But as soon as you tell a person that there's something that they're doing that you don't like, that's disturbing you, that niceness is no longer there. That niceness is taken off the table. So everybody's always nice until you hold them accountable for something They're always nice. But it's like people do not want us to speak up about stuff. They want us to be silent. And that's the point that I'm making. Take away all of the degrading comments and all of the, demeaning, take all of that away. And let's just leave it on the word loud and how that was disturbing her show. Why is it wrong to say that? And how does that become racism? Because I've lived around other black people all my life, and most of them have been horrible neighbors. Those are just facts. It's not saying that I think white people are better. They can be horrible fucking neighbors too. Huh. People in general. It has nothing to do with race. But why is it wrong for Patti Lupone to say, hey, listen, these people are disturbing my show? She should have left it at that. But she did that interview and she started, make throwing shade at Audra Mcdonald and all that stuff. If her and Audra Mcdonald have an issue with each other, they should go to lunch. They should sit down like two women and they should hash it out. I don't know what happened between her and Audra Mcdonald, but at some point it looked like they were friends. And what she said about Audra Mcdonald is nowhere near as bad as what she said about Madonna. If anybody deserves to be mad at Patti Lupone, she dragged and drugged Madonna for filth. She basically said Madonna had no acting ability, she had no acting talent, and she should stop acting and leave that to the real actors. She was like, go look up Patti Lupone and what she said about Madonna on Andy Cohen's show, Watch What Happens Live. Go and look it up. Audra McDonald is an accomplished paragon. She ain't worried about what Patti LuPone said. So why are we jumping on this bandwagon? Oh, it's racism. Why do we keep letting this rile us up, this distraction? Why do we keep letting this, get us all wild up? Listen, I'm not riled up behind it. I'm looking at the bigger picture and how they're trying to implement sneaks in a sneakingly way. They're trying to implement this new law, not a real law, but I don't know, it may become law, who knows. But they're trying to implement this new way of life in our civilization where you basically can't speak out against things that bother you. See, that's the bigger picture. To me, that's the bigger picture. But we get caught up in skin color and fake racial battles. This ain't about no race. This is about someone being punished for speaking their mind. They're going to cancel Patti LuPone. But she kind of brought it on herself because there's a way to speak your mind. She should have never, she should have said nothing because you're on Broadway and Broadway is a certain echelon. It's not like Hollywood and the music, it shouldn't be anyway. It's not like Hollywood in the music industry. Broadway is of a certain upper echelon. And one thing you don't do is tear down other Broadway stars. See, Hollywood can be a ghetto. Broadway is more like, how can I get it? Broadway is like, I'm gonna give you an example. Broadway is like Bethesda. Bethesda, Maryland is an upper class area in the DC area. Broadway is like Bethesda. Hollywood is like Southeast DC. Southeast DC, a lot of parts of it is the ghetto. And they're trying to turn Broadway now into the ghetto. And I'm not talking about in reference to skin color, no. I'm talking about in reference to mentality. Patti Lupone allowed them to basically turn her into a ghetto ratchet person. She took the bait. She should have said nothing but positive things about Audra Mcdonald because you can't say anything but positive things about Audra Mcdonald. You can't say anything but positive things about Patti Lupone as far as her Lupone, excuse me, as far as her acting abilities. Patti Lupone is one of the greatest on Broadway and on the stage, whatever you want to call it. She should not have went in on Audra McDonald that way. Now I can understand her and Keisha Lewis. I can understand that. But when the conversation, so what? Audra liked that comment. So what? Or whatever. So what? She still should not have went in on her that way. When they asked her what she thought about Audra McDonald's, I think she played in that, well, it was a movie too, I think. I think she played in the stage production of Gypsy, if I'm not mistaken, which was also a movie with I think Rosalind Russell played the role. Gypsy, I believe so, I think. And Audra McDonald recently played it on stage. And I believe Patti LuPone, she played the role um, in 2008. So they asked her, what did she think about Audra McDonald's performance in Gypsy? And she turned and said, "Oh, it's a wonderful day today," and all that. You know what I mean? Just being shady and sarcastic. And she shouldn't have done that. If she was going to have a beef with Keisha Lewis, she should have left it there. She should have just left it there. If she had a personal relationship with Audra McDonald, she should have picked up the phone and said, "Hey, Audra, I know we ain't talked in a long time, but let me give you my side of the story. Let me tell you why me and Keisha have this issue." But for me, it's the bigger picture that in this society, no matter whether you're black or white or whatever your race is, we're leading into a society where we're being silenced and censored, where we can't say something is bothering us. Because my mother did the same thing to me. I'm a grown, fully grown man. Nobody's going to tell me that I can't say something is bothering me. Ain't nobody going to do that to me. And you shouldn't let anybody do it to you. That's my whole point. Why couldn't Patti LuPone, if we're only sticking with the word loud, not talking about the other stuff, if we're only sticking with, hey, listen, that sound is too loud, they're too loud over there, that's disturbing my audience, why can't she say that? Maybe it's just me. I mean, I just think differently. I don't go along with the status quo. Changing gears, right? I saw that apology, that public apology that Monique's son, I'm going to say that he was forced to do under duress. Now, I don't have an issue with Monique, but I feel like, well, let me give you the backstory. Monique and her son, I believe he's her oldest son, if I'm not mistaken. Last year, or maybe the year before, I don't remember, he came online and he was basically detailing his dysfunctional relationship with his mother. Trust me, I know all about those. And after that, he went silent. But during that time, Monique and her husband came out and they talked about the son's mental issues in response to the things he was saying about Monique and her husband. Here's my thing. That young man looked like he did that under duress. And he said that his brothers basically wanted to jump him. When he went and met up with his family to discuss this recently about the events that took place online between he and his mother last year, that his brothers basically wanted to jump him. I wish my motherfucking brother would. I would say let's do it because I was here before my brother, and I let him know that I was here before you, and I knew what our mother was before you were born. My mother used to be such a sweet person before she got on crack. She's not on crack now, but crack left its input and imprint in her. Not input, its imprint in her, and that will never go away. So I know what it's like dealing with a narcissistic, psychotic, mentally disturbed, bipolar mother. I know what that's like. So I'm listening to everything that this young man is saying. He said that when he went to remedy this, his brothers wanted to punch him in the face. So basically, they bullied and threatened him, like a lot of black families do. They bullied and threatened him into that apology. See, Monique could not get Oprah and Tyler Perry to publicly apologize to her. So now she's transferred that to her son. They're going to have more problems. They're going to have more problems. And then she used her other sons to bully, threaten a young man that has they already said that he had mental issues. Why would you force someone that you already know is dealing with psychological issues? Why would you force him to come online under duress to give you a public apology? If he gave you a public apology, I'm sorry, if he apologized to you in your face, that's your son. Why did you expect him to do the very thing that you really want Oprah and Tyler Perry to do for you? And see, this is where Monique loses me. This is where she loses me sometimes. I don't think that was right. I don't think that was right. It would have been better, maybe, if she and her husband, because I know he had something to do with it too, it would have been better if she and Sydney would have got on with him and they all would have just had a conversation, publicly. But making him come out here alone and publicly apologize for how he felt, that was wrong. Because even though he apologized, the root of the problems are still there. That Monique was not a good mother to him when he was coming up, just like my mother was not a good mother to me. And a lot of times when you're dealing with narcissistic mothers, they don't want to accept responsibility. They won't accept responsibility. They can be on crack. They don't have to raise their children. They can even try to abort one of their children inside of them, like my mother tried to do to my brother, but he don't know that. But they still think that they are entitled to your energy until you cut the energy supply off. And that is why I cut off all contact with my mother. I will never get on here and do a public apology. They would just have to whoop my ass. They would just have to beat me up. It would have just been a problem. The only way I would do a public apology is if I did something wrong. But a lot of times, narcissistic people, they try to manipulate you into believing that you did something wrong and they're always in the right. And I like Monique as an entertainer, and I stood with her when it came to Tyler Perry and Oprah Winfrey. But your son is not Tyler Perry and Oprah Winfrey. That young man looks like he's under duress. He looks like he's going through something. And he looked like he was reading from a script. What a world, what a world. Y'all heard about Brian Mcknight's son passing away, talking about, you know, toxic parenting and all of this other stuff. And that was the son that Brian Mcknight practically abandoned. The young man had cancer, and now he's no longer with us. Let me read to you his chilling last words to his father. We're going to have church today, y'all. Brian McKnight's son last words. Let's see. What did he say? It's a lot of things they're saying, but how cruel can you be? Nico McKnight, Brian McKnight's estranged son, dies at 32 after cancer battle. Wow, that's horrible. That is really horrible. Let me read. Let me see. But y'all mad at Patti Lupone, right? Ain't nobody talking about this shit right here, right? But black people are mad at Patti Lupone. But you're not talking about this. The terrorism, the psychological terrorism that Monique and Brian McKnight put under or put over their own children, allegedly. Let me see. Let me see. What did he say? I don't know what he said. Uh, his son died of stage 4 colon cancer. There are so many young people in their 30s getting colon cancer now. Let me see. Let me see. What did he say? I'm trying to find it. Give me a second. Because I want to read it. Because everybody, all black people, you're mad at Patti LuPone, but nobody's talking about this. How Brian McKnight treated his own son, a black man. But you're worried about Patti LuPone calling Keisha Lewis a bitch, and you're worried about her shading Audra Mcdonald. Come on now. I can't find what he said, but basically, Brian McKnight did not care for this son. He told him in so many words. I think this son, Nico, wanted Brian McKnight to tell him that he loved him. And Brian McKnight told him, I cannot arbitrarily tell you that I love you. So basically, from what I'm gathering, this son wasn't born in marriage, he was born out of wedlock. So therefore, I'm assuming this is why I keep seeing this quote that you were born in sin. So I can't really tell you that I love you. This is the mental disease of Christianity, of some Christians. This is the mental disease. But y'all worried about Patti Lupone. Let me try to find this, because I got to find this quote. He didn't love his own son. He didn't have a care for his own son. Hmm. But y'all mad at Patti LuPone. But ain't nobody talking about this. Let me see. Nico had spoken publicly about his cancer diagnosis in January 2024, sharing his experience and recovery journey on Instagram. He credited his wife Phoenix for helping to save his life and maintained optimism throughout his treatment. Despite the physical and emotional toll, Nico remained hopeful, writing, shit's going to get better, I know it. Nico and his brother, Brian Jr., once performed alongside their father in a short. Wait a minute, wait a minute. Claude did not go into detail about the long-standing rift between Brian McKnight and his older children, but acknowledged the pain within the family. There's so much hurt going on. A lot of things didn't get resolved, he said, adding that he carries his own regrets about the situation. He concluded in a video with a tearful goodbye. Um, Brian McKnight referred to his older children as a product of sin in an Instagram video. So, what that tell you right there? He looked at his older children as products of sin. And I know that has something to do with Christianity and them possibly being born out of wedlock, maybe, I don't know. But when he's using those words, when he's using that type of wording, you know it has something to do with toxicity connected to religion. But y'all worried about Keisha Lewis, right? And Patti LuPone, while shit like this is going on in the black community. What type of monster is that? What type of monster would make their child get online and read basically a ransom letter? Because that's what Monique's son was reading. That was basically like a ransom letter. What type of monster would make their child do that when you know your child has mental issues? Same thing with my mother. What type of monster would try to abort her unborn child inside of her? And then you have other black women in who I know are trying to put my mother in the same category as decent mothers. And that is a disrespect and a dishonor and a dishonoring of decent mothers to put that type of person in the frequency of being a decent mother. Well, according to the Bible, it says, honor thy mother and father, and thy days will be longer. Well, I have a question. Well, no, I don't have a question, actually. I don't. The world has gone crazy. The world has gone crazy. We can't express how we feel because Monique's son last year, he was expressing how he felt. Brian McKnight's son was expressing how he felt. Patti Lupone was expressing her experience, even though she went off in another trajectory. But it's like now we get punished when we express how we feel. We get punished for that or humiliated or threatened or bullied or harassed. I feel like what Monique did to her son, I think that that family was harassing him probably, and they forced him to come online and do that. And he did say that after they got all of the dust settled, they got all that out the way, they all hugged and everything else. But see what I'm talking about? Did y'all hear that big boom over? See, that's what I'm talking about. That's what I'm talking about right there. Did you hear that big boom over top of me? Did you hear that? That's the type of stuff that I'm talking about. But I'm not supposed to say nothing about that. I'm not supposed to say anything if somebody's disturbing me. I'm supposed to keep quiet because they're black too. So I'm not supposed to say anything. You see that type of wicked, that's wicked spell work. That's like trying to bind someone. But I'm not supposed to say anything about that, right? Monique's son was not supposed to tell the world that his mother was not a good mother to him coming up. And that's what was on his heart. They flipped all of that back on him. They flipped all of that back on him. Now, how come Monique hasn't come out and said anything? How come she has not come out and said anything? And I'm not bashing Monique. This is not about bashing Monique. I would never do that. I happen to love Monique. I love her work and I love what she stands for when it comes to standing for injustice. But this with her son, I don't ride with this. I can't rock with that. I think that was wrong. And somebody, if anybody has or it should have been her husband, should have said, you know what, this is a family matter. Yeah, he did make that public, but why don't all of us come on publicly and just have a conversation with each other? Maybe they will do that at some point. And if they do, hey, that's good. I'm willing to be wrong, but I don't think that young man was wrong for coming out, speaking out against what he felt like was bad experiences that he had with his mother. Same thing with Brian McKnight's son. He told that boy, I cannot arbitrarily say that I love you because basically you were born in sin, meaning out of wedlock. I'm tired of talking about this shit, y'all. This world bores me. Anyway, this is the occult view. Enjoy your Sunday.